folks, Tom Vasel here, and today we're talking about my top 10 favorite Arkham-themed games, Cthulhu-themed games, Lovecraft-themed games. Now, I don't necessarily understand the absolute love for Lovecraft's works. I've read his books, and I found them dry and just not that exciting, and I know I'll get a lot of hate for that, but that's just me. I'm sure I'm not trying to disparage him, just not a huge fan of his works myself. But there's no denying that a lot of his games have made it into the board gaming, especially since his works are now public domain, so everyone and anyone can make a Lovecraft-themed game. So there are a lot of them. And you know what? Even though I'm not a huge fan of his works, I really do like a lot of these games. I'm not a huge fan of horror, and I still think the whole thing about Cthulhu is a little weird to have this big giant beast that shows up and just destroys everything, so what's the point? But whatever. There's a lot of great games, and you know what? I'm probably not going to put some of yours on the list because there's that many. So here we go. These are my 10 favorite Arkham Cthulhu-themed games. Number 10 is Arkham Horror. This game, and you say, what? That's like the definitive game. Well, there's games that have replaced it. That's why it's so low on the list. But I played a lot of this game. I'm talking mostly about the 2005 reprint from Fantasy Flight Games on the original game from Richard Launius, where you play this game and you go through and find all sorts of things. I love the whole story part of the game. You go here, you turn over a card, it tells you what happens. You're like, oh man, I gotta go do this, and I gotta fight a monster, and these monsters are hard to fight, and you get machine guns and stuff, but that doesn't always work. And then sometimes the big bad Cthulhu or whatever shows up, and you gotta fight them. A lot of cool things happen in this game. Each game's a very different story. My number 10, Arkham Horror. Number 9 is A Study in Emerald. Now, here's the interesting thing. I have yet to play A Study in Emerald 2nd Edition. Z has, and he says it's better than A Study of Emerald, so I believe him. But A Study in Emerald, to me, as you are secretly trying to, work with these cultists and things to take over the earth, and it's deck building, and there's a lot going on in this Martin Wallace game. Just very impressive to me. It has a horror underlying, but the game itself kind of rises above that. And it has some unique things because you're never quite sure who's on what team. And even the people on your own team, you want to be better than them, which is an interesting thing, and it all works together. It's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around, which I guess makes the Cthulhu theme just that much more prevalent. A Study in Emerald. Number 8 is Tides of Madness. This is a 2-player game from Portal Games. The first one, Tides of Time, it's a micro game. Each player is playing a card. They flip the cards, and you're drafting cards. And then as you draft the cards, you're trying to draft cards you need and draft cards that you don't want your opponent to get. Tides of Madness was a sequel to that, almost the same game, except it added madness, because if you could get your opponent to go insane, you won. I love that. I love having that extra additional thing in there. Also amazing artwork, just great. The Cthulhu theme is not extremely strong in this game, but it's there. That madness is always in the background. Let's see. Number 7 is Elder Sign. Now, this is the one that a lot of folks like. I have not played most of the expansions. I played mostly just the base game, but I like the idea of rolling dice, getting the different symbols that you need to complete the cards as you work together cooperatively to stop Cthulhu, whoever you're fighting at that point in time. This is at least one of at least 4 different games that you roll dice for Cthulhu. There's a lot of games that roll dice with Cthulhu involved. There must just be something about dice and Cthulhu. But it works together in a very good way, and this game has come out several years ago, and it still seems to be going strong, Elder Sign. Number 6 is Ancient Terrible Things. Now, this one and Elder Sign are pretty close. I like this one a little bit better. This is another dice rolling game. This is one that many people haven't heard of, but this one I really like the artwork. It has a different feel. Fantasy Flight's Cthulhu artwork starts feeling all the same. And I think I have like 4 of their games on my list here, right, from Fantasy Flight. This Ancient Terrible Things felt a little bit different than that as you go off in the jungles and place, and you're finding these things that you need to fight. You don't want to accidentally summon the great old ones. And again, you're rolling dice and using chips and different things to re-roll dice. I think I like it better than Elder Sign. Okay, then we're up to number 5, which is Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu. I kind of laughed when I first heard of this, like, ha, ha, ha. But it actually works really well. It's a pandemic game set in the Cthulhu universe. So instead of stopping diseases, you are stopping cultists and big Shoggoth things that show up, and you need to work together. It has a very constrained, tight feel. Pandemic's already a little bit tight. This one is even tighter. It feels different enough from Pandemic. It's slightly more random as different elder gods and things show up to cause negative effects. It's very hard to beat and definitely brings that horror-filled dread to your stomach that Pandemic already had some with the diseases. Now this just throws it in the Cthulhu realm. Pandemic, Reign of Cthulhu. Then number 4 is Cthulhu Wars. Now, I don't own Cthulhu Wars because it's extremely expensive, but the big giant, I mean, if you want to see Cthulhu go up against the other Elder Gods, I always can't remember any of their names, but big, giant, chunky miniatures. When I first saw this game, I was like, okay, fine, it's probably not much of a game here. They probably just made these big miniatures. No, it's a pretty solid game. As you are trying to, it's very asymmetrical. Each of the different Elder Gods has their own special abilities and their own goals and things, but you're also going around fighting each other. So it's like a light war game, but also area control. And I think the whole thing comes together really well. It's probably too expensive for what it is, but if you have it, you're going to really like it, and it certainly embodies the Cthulhu mythos. Number 3 is Kingsport. Now, I like this one because of the game it's based on, which is Kingsburg. Kingsport is similar to the dice rolling game at Kingsburg, but instead of the nice fun fantasy theme, this one is a very horror themed. In fact, it has the most horrific artwork of any of the Cthulhu games, in my opinion. Now, this is the board game, mind you. The card game is okay at best, but the board game is really well done. And in this game, you're going to roll dice, place them out to be able to use the different Elder Gods to get different points in various ways. It takes up a huge amount of table space, probably too much, but it is a solid, it's built on Kingsburg, which is a great game, Kingsport. Number 2 is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. And my number 1 and 2 were very, very close, but Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, as you go through, and this is one of the few games that I play solo, but it uses a device. I use my iPad with it, which brings in sound effects, which brings in music, and also randomizes the game and lets you, in the original Mansion of Madness, you have to put the cards in the right places and figure out where they went. This does it automatically for you. It's an extremely strong story as you go through mansions and towns and open up doors, and there's puzzles involved in the game, which I really think are fun. The whole thing comes together and just provides an experience unlike any other of the games. In fact, I think the experience is anyway, my number 1 and 2, like I said, are really close, but the Mansion of Madness 2nd Edition, I have it on my shelf somewhere right around here. Just a fantastic game. I love playing it. And my number 1 is Eldritch Horror, which I also love playing, and that's also around here somewhere. There's Mansions of Madness, and Eldritch Horror is somewhere else around here, but right here. Got them. Okay, so anyway, I don't know why that mattered to show you where they were on the shelves, but Eldritch Horror is, for me, the thing that knocked Arkham Horror down to 10. Eldritch Horror is very similar to Arkham Horror, a lot of the same mechanisms, but instead of being confined to the city of Arkham, you are going all over the world. You're going down to the Antarctica to find the different things that happen down there, and going to South America, and going to London, and going to Arkham. And it has that same horror theme that Arkham does, but also a style of adventure. Think Indiana Jones. And you go around, and it's an extremely hard game, but there's a lot of choices. I don't know, the whole thing is just this fun romp. And Arkham Horror had this crazy, convoluted, random story. Eldritch also is convoluted and sometimes random, but it has a more focused story depending on which Elder God you're going after. And I really enjoyed that. I really feel like when I'm doing this, it's like, all right, we got to get to the final boss. We got to get it. We got to stop darkness from taking over the world. And so when it comes to this Mansions of Madness, Mansion of Madness is a smaller, more, hey, I'm talking to this guy. Is he a cultist? I'm not sure. Eldritch Horror, you're like, I'm going to visit London and see what happens there. They're both very similar, but they're easily my 2 favorite, Eldritch Horror and Mansions of Madness of the Arkham games. What's your favorite Call of Cthulhu style game? Maybe it's the LCG, maybe it's a RPG, I don't know. There's a lot of games out there about Cthulhu. A lot of people really like that. Let me know in the comments. These are my 10 favorite board and card games from the Lovecraft mythos. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been The Dice Tower.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.